Welcome CSE 103, Intro to Computing. This is exercise 16, Favorite Shows, and we're going to be working with HTML and CSS. And in the past we worked in CodePen. We're going to be working with Replit like we did in our first exercise where we did HTML and CSS practice. So this is a finished product of our layout, and you can use different shows and you can use a different picture, but we're going to use kind of the same colors and the same layout. So that's what we're going to practice here. Now let me just point out what's here before we get started. We have a headline in each one. It's in blue. The blue's kind of picking out a dark blue from the picture, so if you had a different picture, you could use a different color. And I'm using an antique white background, just like we used in the first exercise, exercise 15. And we have two paragraphs here that are actually side by side. We're going to use something called Flex to do that, Flexbox, to put these two paragraphs side by side, because naturally they stack on top of each other. So we're going to put them side by side. We're going to put them in a container, which is a div. A div is just an area on a web page, and we're going to give it a name called container so that we can target it through CSS. And it's going to have a light blue background. We'll put some padding on the left and right. We don't need any on the top and bottom because it already has space above and below paragraphs by default. And we'll even make the container a little bit shorter so we can make it like 60% of the page. Over here we have an ordered list. An ordered list in HTML basically means it's a numbered list. If it was unordered, it would be a bullet list, but because we have numbers, that's an ordered list. I don't care if you use numbers or bullets. You could use UL if there's bullets and use OL if there's numbers. And these things are hyperlinked, so you can see they have an underline under them. Typically they're blue, but they're purple because I already clicked on them and they're visited. But if you click on these links, they open up in a new tab. So we have to use a target attribute to do that. Just like when you turn in your exercises, if we use new window, it's the same thing. It uses target blank, which targets a new window. So that's what you're going to do. So all of these open up in a new window, and they open up to a link of a Wikipedia site that describes what the show is. So if you weren't sure what the show is, like what's Goliath, you could click on it and you read about it. And I just use Wikipedia. You could use other sites too that describe the TV shows if you want to. And again, you don't have to use TV shows. You could use movies. You could use anything else. You could use books, whatever you want. You don't have to use just shows. I just do shows because whenever I have any time or something at night, we watch these series on Netflix and Amazon and stuff like that. So these are the most current ones that I had watched: Prison Break, Your Honor, and Goliath, in no particular order. Really, and sometimes we'll watch a whole series in one weekend. But anyway, that's what you're going to do for this exercise. So whether you do shows, or it could be albums, it could be anything else, and then we'll put in a picture here that will actually float to the right. We'll actually use a float property in CSS. So we're going to use just basic HTML, and we'll use the Emmet shortcuts, which will be easy to use, and then we'll actually use CSS. So here's the finished product. We're going to have our index HTML, and again, a lot of that is started for us, but we're going to have, there's our H1, a container. We're going to make sure we have our indents really nice so we could see what's inside of what as we do this. And here's our ordered lists, and here's the links where they have this aref and then an A at the end, which is an anchor element. And here's our image source. We did that on the first exercise, and that's it. And then our style.css is basically going to have some styles for the body, pretty much like we did in the first exercise, a color for the heading. And then container, when we do the side-by-side paragraph things, we'll give a bunch of properties for that. Give it a background color. We'll tell it to display flex, so it uses side-by-side. We might have to add a little padding. Some of this we'll use as we go. The image, we'll just put a border on it. We'll use some margin left and margin top to position it a little bit better. We'll readjust the size of it. So if your image is too big, you can adjust it here. And then we're also going to float our list to the left of our image instead of floating the image to the right, because then it bumps to the right of the page. So we're just going to float our list to the left. So that's all we're going to do. So I just wanted to show you the finished product first. I'm going to start this from scratch, so let me do that next. But this is what it's going to look like, and this is exercise 16, favorite shows. Now when you go to your Replit page, it should look like this. If you don't see this sidebar here, just click on this. So if you see it looking like this, click on your sidebar, the hamburger menu, go to My Repels. And what I'm going to do is go in my folder. If you don't have a folder, just create a new repel. But I have a folder, so I'll go inside this folder. And there's the first one I did that was kind of the practice. So I just went through things so I had a finished product. But I'm going to make a new one, but I'm going to make it inside this folder. So I'm going to do create repel. And again, I'll choose HTML CSS. If you can't find it, you can search here, HTML, and it'll come up. And then right away, give it a name. Just call it 16-Fav Shows. and you can put dash and just put your last name or put your initials, whatever, just so it identifies you. In case I have to bring it into my Replit account to look at it, to edit code, then I don't have a bunch of copies that just don't have anything after them. So at least I know who they are. So at least put your initials at the very least. So I'm going to do create repel, again, for HTML, CSS, JS. And a lot of this will be review from the first exercise. When it first opens, you might see this. And if you hit run, it previews at hello world. I don't really need this, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this up in a new tab so that my finished page will be showing up here in a new tab. So let me do that. And I see nothing but hello world. Then this thing I can move over. I could kind of go in between here, move that over. I don't really need to look at that. And this is our index HTML. That's our root homepage. And by root, meaning that's the main one that we're going to go to first. And what I'm going to do first, actually looking at this code, is go to my settings, make sure I have tabs and I have indent size 4. It seems to give it kind of a shorter indent here. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tab these over a little bit more. Everything that's tabbed, I'm just going to tab them over more so it's more pronounced. So they're going to show up on these lines here. I think that's going to make life a little easier if we do that right from the beginning. I'll tab that over, I'll tab this over, and make sure that the first line is HTML, the second line coming down after tabbing it is body, and head and body, they're the same children of HTML, so they could be like that. But as long as you tab, it just gives a little bit better kind of structure setup. And you're not going to need this. You're not going to need this stuff. Just like in the last one, we don't need hello world, we don't need a script, so we're not going to use our JavaScript. And also for your title, you could just put 16 Fav Shows. It doesn't matter if you put a space in here because it's just going to show up here where it says Replit right now. That's going to change. It's your tab here, not your tab here. It's your tab in your page. So favorite shows, and I'll just put my last name, Homa, for now. So if I ran it, I'd see nothing except this thing. If I refresh it, now my title changed, but there's nothing else on my page. So there's nothing to look at yet. What we are going to put first in our body, if you remember how that looked, we're going to put a headline, and I'm going to hit return after body. And you can see now it's kind of indenting a little bit more now, and I'm going to put an H1. I'll put H1 and I'll hit tab. And actually this should be moved over a little bit. Let's make sure we get these right. Okay, that's right. Looks like it's over too far. So there's our H1, and what we're going to put inside our H1 are my favorite shows, or whatever you use. If you don't use shows, if you use something else, my favorite shows, and I'll just put fall 2021. And after this, when I hit return here, it's not going to indent because it's not going to know that there's something inside an H1. So what's going to come up next is we're going to put 2 paragraphs. Now we're going to do this with the Emmet shortcut, and we're going to do a whole bunch with just a couple keys here. So pay attention to this. First of all, we're going to make a container that has a class name div. And the shortcut to do that is just type div and then put dot container. That means it's going to make a div with a class name of container. The dot indicates that it's a class name. And then we're not done yet. We're going to put our greater than sign, which means that inside of there, we're going to put 2 paragraphs. So we're going to put P, and then we're going to put times 2 using an asterisk. And then inside of there, we can use the greater than sign again. We're going to put lorem 30. We're going to make 2 paragraphs with 30 words in them. So that's that placeholder text. So there's a div container. It's going to have 2 paragraphs that have lorem 30 inside them. And then we're just going to hit our tab key. And if you have any problem, just backspace and try it again. Or try typing the whole thing again. But let me hit tab, so this should create everything that we want. It's showing Emmet right here. And there it is. It made div class container. And here's the opening div and the closing div. And here's the first paragraph that goes up to there, and here's the second paragraph that goes to there. You could put a space in there if you want to break these up just to look at the code a little bit easier. You can do that. And you can see it's this kind of Latin looking text that's in here, and notice that the P's are children, the paragraphs are children of the div, which is just a space in HTML. It's just an area, and we're giving it a special name so we can identify it to style it. And let's take a look at what we have so far. And there it is. Just very generic HTML. We're going to color the background and put these in columns and do all that. Now what we're going to do next is we're going to put a ordered list and we're going to put it after the container. So it's going to be after. So I'm going to go here and put it after, not inside the div. Make sure you go after the closing div. And we're going to do an ordered list, and I'll do it like this. I'll put OL, and then I'll put a greater than sign, because this means inside of, and what's going to be inside of the list is going to be line items, which are LIs, list items, and then we're going to do 3 of them. So you could do times 3. You could do this one at a time. You could have done the OL and hit tab, and then inside there did LI, and did LI again, and LI again. But we're doing it all in one shot here. So it's going to make an ordered list with 3 LIs inside, and I'll hit tab. And there they are. And what we're going to do next is put our favorite shows in here. So I think I did Prison Break, and again, this is just for ones that I watched recently. Prison Break and Your Honor with Bryan Cranston from Breaking Bad, in case you're not familiar with it. And then this one, there's something else I watched, I forget. Oh, Goliath. I watched Goliath. I think that was in September. So there's my show. So that just puts a list there. And I'll go take a look at it and refresh it. And there's my list. Now, it's not linked yet. We're going to link these to the actual shows. And before we do anything else, let's do that. Now, the way this is a little tricky, because if you try to put a letter and then hit tab in here, it's going to think it's text already. So the way this works is if I'm going to link to Prison Break, the actual page, what I want to do is hit space first and then go back here so that I'm not right up against Prison Break. Because if I go here and type A and hit tab, it's just going to tab. So what I need to do is put a space first, kind of move that away, and then go inside here right next to that bracket and do A and then hit tab. And now it makes a with a ref or href attribute, empty quotes, and then there's my closing A tag, and that's an anchor tag, and this is for hyperlinking. Hyperlink reference is what that stands for. So it's an anchor, that's what the A is. Now this A needs to be after Prison Break, but it needs to be before the closing LI. So inside the LIs is going to be the A's, and then there's the text. So this is hyperlinking the text. So I'm going to cut this. I'll do Command X, and on Windows you could do Control X, and I'm going to put it here, and I'll paste it. And if you have an extra space, you could get rid of that. And that's what it should look like. And if I look at it right now, let's just check it out. It actually has a link. Now, it's not going to go anywhere yet because I don't have it linked anywhere, so it's not doing anything. But it is working. It's hyperlinked. And what you might want to do at this point is just to highlight this, copy it, and put this here, and put this here, and then highlight the closing A here, copy it, and put it here, and put it here. That's just quicker. And then what we're going to do to hyperlink these is we're going to put the URLs of these pages inside these quotes. And even before we do that, let's do one other thing, because once we put the URL in, it's going to be really long. Go inside here before the closing bracket of the opening anchor and just put a space and do something called target, and you can click on target here, and it right away it does the equals and 2 quotes. Now that's an attribute that will open up the link in a new window, just like when you turn in something, when you add comment, and I tell you to make it open a new window. That's what that does. That's what target does. And what you're going to put in is underscore blank. So hold your shift key, use the dash, and get an underscore blank, and that should be in quotes. And now that I did that, I'm going to copy that, including the space, and I'm going to paste this here, and I'm going to paste this here. So that's what it should look like before we put our hyperlinks in here. I think this will be easy. I did it other ways, but I think this is easy because they're nice and short right now. Because now we're going to paste in our hyperlinks in here. So everything should work. So if I go on here and refresh it, it opens up nothing. It actually opens up a new tab, but it opens up the same page. So it opens up it itself, which we don't want to do. So we want to open up a new page, but it actually works. If I click on here, look, it's opening a new tab. So it knows to do that. It's just not opening up the link we want. So the link we want, let's go with the first one here. I'll just look up Prison Break. And I'll just do wiki. I'll just use wikis again. And there's Prison Break, Wikipedia. And you can just copy the URL up here. I'll just copy it. I'll do Command C if you're on Windows, Control C. And then go back to your code and paste it right inside the quotes. There it is. And while I'm in Wikipedia, I'll search Goliath TV series, and there it is. I'll copy the URL, Control C on Windows, Command C on Mac. I'll come back here and I'll put it here. Now I did the third one here because I couldn't think of Your Honor. And I'll paste that inside the two quotes. And there it is. And then finally, I'll do Your Honor. And it says American TV series, so there it is. And then I'll highlight the URL, copy it, go back here and put it inside this one because this one's for Your Honor. And I'll paste that. And remember, you don't have to hit run, but I like to do that sometimes. But the important thing is to refresh it. Let's see if they work. And this should open up the Wikipedia in a new tab, so make sure you close up that other one. So here it is. Here's the link. There it is. Ah, that looks good. How about this one? Ah, that looks good. How about this one? Ah, even better. All right, so that stuff's working. So those are links that are opening up in new tabs, and they look fine. And now what we'll do is we'll just put a picture that'll go next to here. First of all, it'll actually go, I think, after it. We'll put a picture after it, but then we'll try to move it up here. So we'll do this before we take a break. So after this closing OL, I'm going to hit Enter or Return, and I'm going to type IMG and then hit Tab, and that'll write my code to put an image in. And right away in your alt text, you can put Prison Break. I'll use Prison Break. I'll put Prison Break pick. And again, that's just if the image doesn't load or for using text-to-speech software. So that's why that's there for people with disabilities. So that's important to put in there. And then this is where the URL to the image is going. So let's go find an image. Now, I'll open a new tab and I'll type Prison Break. And this time I'll click on Images and I'll find some cool image from the series. You could use one that has a, you know, the title on, whatever you want to do. I used this one before. Let me use a different one. Let me use this one. And when you click on it, check out how big it is. That's 960. That's really big. And we're going to want to make it smaller. And we'll use CSS to do that. But for now, I'm going to try this one. I'll right-click on it. And we're not copying the image. We're actually going to copy the image address, just like we did in the first exercise. So copy image address. And I'll go back to my code and I'll paste it right in here. That's where the image source goes. And we're not linking it, that's just the image. So let's just take a look at what we have. And I'll refresh it. And it's really big. And you could just leave it big right now because we're going to resize it with CSS. So there's no reason to change the width. You could put it in the HTML and put width, you know, and make it smaller and see how big you want it. I mean, we did that last time, but we're going to take it out anyway. So just leave it really big right now, and we'll adjust that with CSS. But I think what I'll do is I'll take a break now. And so far, we've only been working on our index.html. What we're going to be working on next is our style.css page, which is already pre-linked. So we're going to do that in part 2. So I'm going to go here. I'll close this up since I already have my image. This I'll leave open because I'm going to want to keep previewing this each time. And we're going to make the background a different color. We're going to color this. We're going to put it in 2 columns. We're going to make the image smaller, put a border on it, a whole bunch of things we'll do. And we'll do that all with CSS. And that'll be coming up in part 2.